Hello and welcome to Money Tips. I read with dismay today that according to the British Retail Consortium, 72,000 people lost their jobs in the retail industry in the past year, mostly due to the effect of online shopping and automation. The British Retail Consortium said that the number of employees dropped by 2.3%, and the retail sector is one of the biggest employers in the country. That was just in the second quarter, and marked the 14th consecutive quarter of year-on-year decline. And retail is at, I suppose, the front line of all these technological changes, with consumers increasingly spending their money online. Now, I'm not blaming everyone. I shop online as well, but roughly 18% of British retail sales are now made over the internet, and we're also seeing wage reductions and more automation of the tills, which I don't like. I mean, you go through the till, don't you, and you put your stuff through, and halfway through it says unknown object found in the bag. Well, I've only put the shopping in the bag. Then you have to call the assistant over, and she taps something and turns, and then lets you through. Every time I've used those machines, I want to see a person. I want someone to scan my shopping and put it in a bag for me. But anyway, that's just my little rant. Now, in a way, you might say, well, that's just fair competition. That's just the way things are. We're in a different world now. You can't just hark back to the past. But the shops are under a little bit of unfair competition. They've got to pay quite high business rates, and they're lobbying the government to reduce business rates. They say that in retailers account for 6% of GDP in the country, but 26% of business rates, which is disproportionate according to what they produce. And the rates raise more than 30 billion annually, about the same as the council tax that people pay on their houses. They've also been hit by higher national living wages, which has added to their costs, and it's pushed them to reduce their investment. And then they've had to sort of then put more money into automation to bring down their staff bills. So it's quite a serious concern, and I think something's got to be done about it. I know, and they're lobbying the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson to do something particularly about business rates, because otherwise we're going to see the high street die. And when that happens, we're not going to have that convenience and pleasure of using the high street. And I know that if you look at a shop in one of the high streets near me, they would have to pay rents of say 25,000, but on top of that they've got to pay business rates of around 12 to 15,000. So it's half as much as their rent, which is, to me, it seems disproportionate to me that the rates. And what are the rates for? They're just to collect rubbish and run the streets and run the councils, but the shops often don't directly benefit from that, because they've usually got to pay extra to have their rubbish collected. And I know when I had an office, I had to pay extra or get a company to come and collect the rubbish. So it didn't even cover that, which you'd expect in a household. You expect that when you pay your council tax, they collect your bins. It's one of the main services. So shops are rightly worried about this. So if you open up a shop in the high street, you've got 40-odd thousand pounds just for a small shop in a secondary kind of high street, not down in Oxford Street, before you've even opened the door. Then you've got your staff and all the rest of it. How can they survive? And the answer is they're not surviving, because I see shops come and go all the time. Some of the shops, I think, are a victim of their own stupidity, really, because they open up shops. There's an ice cream parlour here and they open up another one next door. And how can they both survive? One of them goes out of business. People don't even eat much ice cream at £7 a tub anyway. So I don't know why they're opening up double-fronted shops. However, I do feel for the people in retail, and we've seen big retailers, HMV, House of Fraser, wasn't it, and Debenhams in trouble, and many other smaller retailers going out of business. I would say smaller, like chains of retail, Tiger and other shops that I know of. Some of the shops are doing well, the ones that have embraced online combined with retail. So you order, say, from Next online, you can go into the shop, try it on, you can take it away at that time, or you can give it back to them and they send it back to you. But I'm a bit dismayed by it, and I feel you know, we're passing that age where, you know, we might see shops just disappear, and it would be very sad and very unpleasant. Now, I want to give you at least 4 good reasons why you should shop more in your high street and in shops rather than just shopping online. The first one is obviously jobs. Now, those 72,000 jobs, you might, well, I don't work in retail, it doesn't affect me. But, what, you know, in a roundabout way, or ultimately it will affect you. We're all connected. So it may not affect you directly, but maybe the company you work for will be affected because it supplies someone directly in the retail, or someone who supplies retail, and then there's, so it's all a chain. We're all in this one world here. It may be that the people who work in retail are also your customers, and there'll be less of them if they haven't got a job. Or, you know, if people become unemployed and the economy gradually gets dragged down, it will affect all of us eventually, because those people who are unemployed have got to go on benefits. So if they're on benefits, who's paying for the benefits? It's not coming out of some magical fund, it's coming from taxpayers. So that will affect you, and eventually your tax will have to go up to pay for the people who are not working. So that's the first reason. I think local service is another thing. The second reason I'd say is local service. I like to go to places and touch things and feel them, and actually talk to people, not talk to a machine. Now, I bought this camera in John Lewis, this nice Canon camera. It's not a top of the range SLR, but it's not the bottom either. And you know, I like the fact that I could go in and talk to and ask some advice and talk to experienced people and say, look, I'm looking for a camera. This is kind of my budget. I want to spend £300-400. What can I get for that? And they said, well, this is one, or they also recommended a Pentax. So I looked at those, and a Nikon. So it was a Nikon or this came up, and I don't know. I like the Canon, the feel of it, and you know, I bought one actually, and this is another reason why using the shop is good, because I bought a camera and then found that I really wanted one with a flip out back, so that, you know, if I could film myself and vlog and that sort of thing and see myself, and the one that I originally bought, the Nikon, didn't have that. So I went back and said, look, you know, I want to change this. They said fine. The Nikon was a bit more expensive for the one with the flip out back, so I went for the Canon and ended up getting an extra zoom lens with it as well. And you know, I like the fact that they were there, and you know, I get local service. Now you might say, well, that's just a selfish reason, you just want local service. Well, yeah, it may be a little bit selfish, but I like going to a shop. I like to try things on. Now, I'm not one of these people who will go to a shop and, you know, suck their brains and all their energy and pick all their brains and then go and buy it online because it's £10 cheaper. I mean, I could have bought this online, maybe a little bit cheaper on Amazon, but no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't feel right for me. And, you know, I know that every time I do that, someone's going to lose their job. Well, maybe not directly, because I didn't buy one item, but eventually people will lose their job. So, I just like the fact that there are local people, or people in the shops that can advise me and give me a bit of service and advice. So that was one thing there. I mean, not all shops are good though. I mean, I've been to local shops in my high street, like a print shop that sells prints and ink and printers and that sort of thing. When things went wrong, he didn't want to know, so I don't go back there. He's lost my business forever. But some things are easier to buy online. I mean, some things like a ticket or something like that, you've probably got to go online. Or if it's an online course, you buy it online, obviously. But it's still nice to use shops. And you know, I just feel that I want to continue doing that. This laptop in front of me, I also bought that in John Lewis. I get a good warranty with them as well. I get an additional warranty, and I know that I can go back to them if there's a problem. And that would apply to John Lewis or Dixon's or anybody like that. You can go back there if there's a problem. If you're dealing with online companies, sometimes abroad, you know, you're dialing these 0800 numbers, you're pressing this for that, 2 for that, 3 for that. You can't always get through to people. It's a nightmare. Whereas I know I can walk down the road or jump in the car and get things sorted out. That's the second reason. So first is to save jobs, local service. The third reason is to, you know, get off your arse a bit and go out and do some exercise and walk. You know, instead of sitting at home in front of the couch ordering stuff online, and then you have all these vans, white vans, running around clogging up the streets and banging on everybody's door when you're not in. asking you to hold parcels. Yeah, I mean, it's fun in a way, but why don't you get off your arse and get some exercise and go and shop? You know, my mum didn't drive, she still doesn't drive. She walks to shop, she walks and carries bags. And you know, if you do that, if you, instead of having to fill up a Range Rover once a month, you know, why don't you go out and do a bit of local shopping and go down the road and get your milk or something, get your bread and just walk, you know, get some exercise. You know, you're driving everywhere and then going to the gym and just spend time on a treadmill. Do some exercise. So it gets you out there, doesn't it? It gets you out meeting people, it gets you out talking to people. Shopping should be a social thing as well as just going out to buy something. You know, now, and the fourth reason is that if we don't, you know, we've got to lose them or we're going to use them or lose them. Right? If we don't use these shops, we're going to lose them. They are just going to die. And, you know, some of these magnificent buildings you see that, you know, these old Victorian shops are just going to go and they're going to become bloody apartments. And we also see these retail parks. Now, the retail parks, a lot of those retail parks, you know, around London on the North Circular, in your towns, they used to be factories. And when they were factories, they employed thousands of people, if not several hundred people. Then they became shops. And what then? They then employed maybe 50 people or half the amount of people, or a fraction of the amount of people they used to employ when it was a thriving factory. You know, what's going to be left when they close down? What will replace them? An Amazon warehouse? Then what? How many people will they employ? They'll probably be run by robots. Maybe one person sitting in a warehouse with robots picking out stuff and putting it in a package and sending it off by a drone. Well, then what? You know, we're in this kind of race to the bottom, aren't we? We're in this race to the bottom where everything's becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But what's happening to the jobs? Because let me tell you, Jeff Bezos, you know, when you've, you know, priced everyone out of it and there's no jobs anymore and you've got computers to do everything, you've got drones to deliver things and driverless cars, you know, who's going to buy the stuff? Robots are not going to buy your stuff, Mr. Bezos. And Uber, when they've got rid of all the drivers and have driverless cars, who's going to use an Uber? Robots not going to use an Uber. So we've got to, I think the government and society's got to rethink this, because there are going to be millions of jobs lost. You know, we've seen 72,000 jobs lost in retail, just in one country, in the UK, in the last year. And that's 72,000 people. Where are they working now? Are they working? Are they on benefits? You know, are we paying for their benefits and their housing and that sort of thing? Then what? Is it going to be a situation where governments are just going to accept that there'll be millions of people not unemployable, and that the people who are working are just going to have to pay a lot more tax to support them? I don't know. I mean, countries like Amazon and hardly pay any tax in this country. They're domiciled here, there and everywhere. And, you know, you see companies operating in the UK, and when you look at the small print, that they're based in Dublin or Liechtenstein or whatever, they're not paying taxes, they're not contributing to the economy, but at the same time they're driving shops and companies in this country that have existed for more than 100 years out of business. Can we just accept that? Or are we just going to leave it to the market? I don't think so. I think the government and the think tanks have got to really put their heads around this and say, how are we going to change things so that we manage this process and it's not just a Wild West, you know, disruptive thing that just changes everything, and what are we left with? I know as consumers we like the fact that we can get a cheap Uber everywhere, but that is also driving people that have been in the taxi trade for sometimes for all their life and years, and the taxi trade's been around. It's just completely disrupting it within a few years, and we're seeing this same sort of thing with Airbnb and that sort of thing. So, and I think other countries are looking at this and saying, well, no, we just can't let this. And certainly France will look to protect the way things are done. Now, you might think that they're a bit like Luddites, but at the same time, you've got to control things and balance. You can't just leave everything to the market. Now, you know, I'm a business person. I'm a capitalist. I like the market forces, but at some stage, the government has to step in and regulate things so that we don't just see this free-for-all and race to the bottom. And then what are we left with? We're left with a lot of people out of work, no shops, no big shops that we can go to and buy stuff and try things on. You know, I don't like that kind of shopping. I want my shops, and I want the government to think about this and think of the unfair competition of a company like Amazon that hardly pays any tax here and yet is just driving everybody out of business. And then what? Who is picking up the tab for that. Who's going to end up paying for it? Us, the taxpayers, us. So my advice is to, first of all, do more shopping in a shop, and you know, to save the jobs, to get local service, to get off your arse and get some exercise, and to use them or lose them. So let's do that, and let's start talking to our MPs and talking to the people that be. Because I was at a meeting at a party conference, and there was an MP there, a couple of MPs and different people from think tanks. And I asked the question about where all these jobs are going to come from, and they just dismissed it. They said, no, that's happened before. They always come up with something. But I don't think so. This is the time. It's different from any other time on earth in history. I mean, when, you know, it's not just a question of automation and then there's going to be other jobs created because of that. I don't think so. Artificial intelligence, AI, you know, driverless vehicles will cost millions of jobs, just driverless delivery vehicles. It's already happening in America now. And I think if these jobs go, then society's going to have to radically think about what they're going to do. And I know that Finland have had an experiment where they just give people a certain amount of money and say, look, you don't have to find a job, just go and start a business. Now, that experiment hasn't worked out that well, but Switzerland are looking at it. And I think other countries are going to have to start looking at either some universal income, or are going to have to control things so that, you know, you can't have this complete disruption where a company from America based in somewhere else and with tax havens all over the place can just come in and destroy everything. That's not just about disruption. You might say, no, that you've got to accept that because that's technology and that's just moving with the times. But there's got to be a balance somewhere. You've got to have some sort of balance. You can't just let it be a free-for-all and then be left with, you know, millions of people out of work and, you know, our way of life completely destroyed. So that's my little rant for the day. And I do feel very concerned about this, and I feel very angry about it. Not just it's not even fair competition. You say, well, that's competition. It's not fair competition when companies you don't pay any tax and got very little costs can just do this. You must have some controls, and there must be some payback for doing this. So that's all for now. This has been Charles Kelly helping you to Money Tips, helping you earn, save, accumulate and enjoy more money. Thanks very much.